It's caucus time.
It's caucus time. Welcome on in, Mason, to the picture. No, I just...
Thank you, Ryan.
At the last minute, I made him scoot over. For anyone who's watching, you'll appreciate my framing correctly. If you're just listening on the podcast, it doesn't make any difference to you now, except that he's closer to me, and I've been able to use that at my advantage in the past to make him uncomfortable. So,
True.
It's true. It's true indeed. Oh, man. Welcome on in to another unauthorized caucus. And today, this is like triple unauthorized, because we're going to talk about rioting, insurrection, and quite possibly, I don't know, we're going to unpack some federalism stuff today, because there's a lot of big questions, and it's kind of interesting how much this all interacts with. We're talking about Los Angeles, by the way. If you're not apprised of the news, we'll bring you up to speed on that. But first of all, I'll say go to all the websites. You know where you need to go, but I'm going to remind you, just in case you've forgotten, go to unauthorizedcaucus.com. That's where you'll find the Substack specific page for this podcast. It's got a place you can sign up, get all of the notifications. Also, there's links there to different places, all the past episodes. Make sure you're over there. Down in the link below, or the links in the description below, wherever you are, if you're on the podcast, flip over to the episode description. If you're on Rumble, go down below. You'll find some sponsors that you need to visit. First of all, always, every time, go to phyllisschlafly.com. Keep apprised of the Phyllis Schlafly Eagles. Be on the mailing list there if you're not already. There'll be a sign-up box as soon as you get onto the website. Look on the right side of the screen. That's, of course, where we're sitting right now, the Phyllis Schlafly Center. It's what we do every day. It's why we get to talk about these issues. And of course, there are also a couple of folks who make sure to support this specifically. Wide Awake Clothing is down there. TRexInc.com. There's a promo code to use. Go and shop and get some pretty cool God Family Country, pro-sovereignty swag, and that supports this program as well. You can do that directly if you want, just to tack in everything else we're doing here. Rumble and Substack, very individually, will let you just directly support us. If you don't want any cool swag, that's fine. But Los Angeles, let's get right down to it today. What in the world happened this weekend? Do you want to give a synopsis of the events, or do you want me to? Just like the quick, less than 5 minutes, here's where we got to from last week to today.
Go for it.
Okay. I figured you'd do that to me. Here, I've got this pulled up from radio notes already. Bottom line, as you would assume, all of the different ICE and Customs and Border Patrol, that's Immigration Customs Enforcement, Border Patrol, DHS, all of the raids around the country, particularly in big cities, have been facing a lot of legal backlash and judicial knockdowns, but finally it got to the level of 2020 Summer of Love Antifa protesting. So this is happening in other places. Let's be clear. Chicago, we're starting to see big marches in the streets. What happened, though, in Los Angeles, that very quickly turned into, sometime over the last weekend, as of the time we recorded this, giant crowds starting to pelt and hurl things at the ICE detention facility in Los Angeles. And then that escalated into some really crazy stuff that by the time we got 2 days in had become like full-blown riot. I saw videos, and again, there is, in my mind, well, no, I won't give my opinion yet, videos of California Highway Patrol having to hide underneath overpasses, their cars being pelted with Molotov cocktails, fireworks, cinder blocks, big caravans of ICE and DHS federal police SUVs and cars driving down the road, just surrounded on both sides by all these Antifa figures with masks on. And I'm using Antifa not as the proper A, like big A, capital A, proper Antifa, but whoever they are, the people who look like that. I don't quite know. That's part of the discussion we'll have. Hurling rocks, breaking windshields as these guys are driving by really fast in the city streets. I mean, this is an unruly riot attacking federal law enforcement officers.
We're waving foreign flags.
And then, yes, and that was by day 2. By day 3, we had burned out, I forget what the company is,
Waymo.
We like some of these self-driving taxis.
Yep, they would order them there, and they'd show up, and then they'd burn them.
And that was one of the famous big streets in Los Angeles. Or one of the famous images, big street in Los Angeles, you got this lineup of these Waymo self-driving taxis.
I was actually pretty impressed by how they got them all lined up in a neat row like that.
It did.
But I guess the car just stops when it's like, oh, there's something on fire in front of me. And then
But they got, I mean, the famous photo now is all these burned out cars, but here, you know, guy on a dirt bike and then someone else standing on top of a burned out shell of a car waving Mexican flags. In fact, we got a couple of protesters too, and I'm not, for the sake of time, we won't play the clip, but one gal yelling, you can't do this to us on our own land. This was Mexico. This still is our land. Get off. I mean,
was Mexico.
Well, technically it was Spain. Let's be clear. Back before we settled it, it was New Spain at a certain point. So I digress.
See, I'm just saying, if they want to fight, as a Texan, I'm okay with us rehashing the Alamo. Like, we can run that back.
I saw.
We remember, and we're still bitter.
I saw a little bit of that. We'll incorporate some of that discussion into it. But that's the bottom line of what's happened in Los Angeles. So the timeline of a few events. At a certain point, of course, what happens? What's a common phrase when riots like this get out of control? It's time to call in the National Guard. Mm-hmm. We hear this all the time. Well, the National Guard is, of course, a state entity, technically, even though it says national. Really, in my mind, the National Guard is kind of a way to get around what we're going to talk about today, because it's a state entity, but it can be federalized, but it's technically state. Mm-hmm. So that gives you the ability for the federal government to call up more troops without actually having a giant force that is necessarily federal that can work at the state level. Because here Trump called out the National Guard, not in conjunction with Governor Gavin Newsom. He called out the National Guard in spite of Gavin Newsom. Mm-hmm. And then Trump activated 700 active duty Marines from 29 Palms to come over to Los Angeles as well, which just, of course, oh my goodness, threw everyone in a tailspin, because he's literally activating federal troops for the purpose of law enforcement on U.S. soil, which is no bueno because of Posse Comitatus. Mm-hmm. The Posse Comitatus Act, which is 1878, I believe. Let me pull up my notes. Yeah, 1878, which, of course, limits the use of military personnel for domestic law enforcement purposes. Mm-hmm. However, there's a big but to that.
Yep.
And the big but is the Insurrection Act of 1807. The I word, I said it. Mm-hmm. And unlike what you've heard from the corporate news hacks, not here, but the corporate news hacks, January 6, 2021 doesn't really fit many of the definitions of a violent insurrection to overthrow or stop or throw off a government. Mm-hmm. Waving Mexican flags in the middle of a bunch of burned out property, it does. Chaz, the autonomous zone up in Seattle, that looked like it. These things look like what I would call potentially an insurrection or a rebellion. Yep. So everyone wants to yell about Posse Comitatus, and we say, well, what about the Insurrection Act? And now here we are. Of course, also, by the way, did you see Gavin Newsom yesterday? This is my last little tidbit, and then we'll dive off into the issues. Did you see Gavin Newsom complain? Trump said on I think it was his press gaggle yesterday. This all happened in the span of one day. Trump said, I called him. Trump said something about we talked to him and, wasn't doing it, so we went forward. And then Gavin Newsom tweeted in response to him, no call, no voicemail. He never, contacted me. America should be extremely disturbed at what President Trump is willing to do without discussing with local whatever it was. To which Trump immediately starts texting or getting in touch with John Roberts over at Fox, and then says, I talked to him on Saturday, June the 7th for 16 minutes. Here's a photo of the call log. And Trump sends a screenshot of his iPhone that shows two calls at 1:30 something in the morning Eastern time, a 4-second missed call because he called and went to voicemail, and then a 16-minute call. And he sends the receipts, and he's like, yeah, he's lying. And then Gavin Newsom goes silent.
Yeah, this guy...
So, did Gavin Newsom's 2028 hopes just officially die?
I think we've been watching in real time. They're dying. I mean, Stephen Miller is quote tweeting him every single day, every single thing he says, and it's just glorious to see it all. But I think it's important to frame the whole issue correctly, because I was talking to somebody last night about if you have people that are in your country outside of the domain of your country's law, and they are actively destroying law enforcement resources, actively attacking government buildings, and waving foreign flags, this is not a question of immigration anymore. This is a question of an attack by a foreign entity. Mm-hmm. And at that point, that's shoot on sight type situation. That's not, due process, we got to work. No, and this person I was talking to was like, what are you talking about? No, come on, it's not that. And I said, when the Nazis rolled into Poland, they weren't like, uh-oh, we got to deport these guys. They were like, oh my goodness, our country is being invaded. There are these people that have violated our borders, have come into our country, are actively attacking our government forces, and they represent a foreign entity. We have to defend ourselves. And that's the norm. Like, that's how this is normally treated throughout history of like, okay, this is war. We are being attacked. Our country is being attacked. This is a war situation. That's what's going on here. But our framing is so messed up. We think, oh, it's all like, oh, this is just some immigration issue. But like you look at the images. When you think about it that way, it becomes much more cut and dry what's going on here. This isn't even an insurrection. This is an attack by a foreign entity. This is alien enemies, quite literally. So it's time to bring it up a level. We'll see. I mean, it seems like it's been kind of. I haven't seen any information about the protests from last night, just that the Marines got there. Did they squash it last night, like completely, or are they gonna? I mean, I also saw that there was a curfew put on. The curfew got taken off. A few hundred people got arrested.
Yes,
but
by the way,
is it going to keep going up over the next few days, or are they going to be like, okay, time to go home now?
Yeah, Mayor Karen Bass. There in Los Angeles, she actually did. I watched the press conference, which, by the way, the AI regenerated press conferences with new words in her mouth were much better than the original. But the original, she says, she declared a local emergency. She had issued a curfew for downtown Los Angeles to stop the vandalism, stop the looting. And I thought, why are you stopping all of the peacefulness? Why do we need a curfew on peacefulness?
Right.
I did enjoy that. The Babylon Bee literally, their headlines today wrote themselves. L.A. mayor puts curfew down for peacefulness. Like that was just.
Well, this is not a peaceful protest. It's a bunch of people standing around having fun watching cars burn. You see that one? That was.
Yes, yeah. I saw that. It has been. The White House had some pretty damning short videos with just this weekend. Listening to the audio is of the news talking about how these are peaceful protests. Well, there's some property destruction, but it's largely peaceful, stuff like that. While in the background, you're watching images that would absolutely terrify you if you live near them, because it looks literally lawlessness in the streets. So that kind of begs the question here. This is my big question then, because now we get into it. So what about the Insurrection Act and Posse Comitatus and federalizing troops? But this actually attaches itself to all sorts of other things. The use of federal power in spite of a state. Now, I mean, you and I are not legal authorities. We could talk forever and ever, but the Constitution being written for normal people, the farmers of the day, we ought to all be able to have these intelligent conversations. So I guess there's a few things. I mean, does something like this rise to the level of insurrection? I should say the Insurrection Act, this kind of riot. If so, does it matter? When we say it looks like a foreign attack, not an insurrection so much, I guarantee you a lot of these folks in there are probably U.S. citizens, legal residents as well, but U.S. citizens. It's not just illegal immigrants and aliens who are, burning cars and rioting in the streets. What do we do with those people who are actually brainwashed?
Those are insurrectionists.
So that's the okay.
There are insurrectionists and there are alien enemies,
and they're all together in the same soup pot.
Yeah, they're all doing the same thing together, and the president has executive authority to handle these people and the way that they should be handled. But I mean, the Posse Comitatus Act already has an exception for defense of federal property within a state,
which this stemmed from.
Right.
An ICE detention center.
Yeah, with ICE buildings getting attacked. But it can even go beyond that, because, I mean, as we're talking about insurrection, and Trump hasn't declared this an insurrection, but he has described it as that, but he hasn't, effectively invoked the law of, this is an insurrection.
Right.
But it's just a step. I mean, you look at his tweets and Vance's tweets and Miller's tweets, and Stephen Miller has insurrection in every single tweet he's been sending out. They're one step away from doing that. I mean, my hope is that if this keeps up for the next 4 days, or 3 days, that during the military parade for Trump's birthday, he will declare it an insurrection, and then the entire parade will parade to Los Angeles with him at the front.
I'm not going to find it really fast, but you know the lectern guy from January 6th who carried the lectern by. He's got a big social media presence now. You go follow him on X. He's hilarious. But he said apparently the standard for insurrections is jazz hands because he has, the LA riots of 2025 side screened with him with a hand up waving it at a camera holding the lectern. He's like jazz hands. That's really the red line on insurrections versus non-insurrections. So they just if the rioters would have more jazz hands over in the streets of LA, we could get this done a whole lot faster. No, I think this is really interesting, and here's what this comes down to, because I don't want to time us out necessarily, so I'm not going to talk about the big spending bill that's going through Congress right now on the merits of different things that are happening, because the Senate, where we are currently at this moment in time in the process, the Senate's working their way through it. I don't know if we're going to have 2 weeks or another month of discussion from them before our version goes back to the House. It will be different, though. But some of the big arguments inside of that, whether it's and I've had some of these myself, people who don't like the AI component, and I agree with that, but people who don't like that, heavy-handed federal AI regulation against restrictions upon the states. Hey, that's a 10th Amendment violation. A lot of people don't like the budget deficit side of it. Hey, this adds to the budget deficit. I agree with and see all of these individual points, but that, like this situation, yes, I want to uphold the rights of individuals. I do not want to violate a state. I don't want heavy-handed federal power. However, all of those things are the same fundamental question of, yes, but what's the balance? What is the primary motivation? What is the most important thing we're dealing with? Mm-hmm. So in this case, like the some of the stuff in the big beautiful bill, as they call it, I look at the immigration and other stuff and I say, well, if these are about sealing off the border, stopping the flow of illegal immigration and legal immigration that's destroying the nation, if we're going to save the nation, but not necessarily stop yet the flow of money into the big national debt column, fine. Save the nation, figure out the debt. If we lose the nation, the debt's irrelevant.
Right.
That's kind of how I prioritize. So here, I don't want to violate the rights of citizens. However, there is this thing also called an insurrection, and you're participating in this. So, everyone, I don't care. If the governor of the state is unwilling, maybe it's time for the federal power to step in. But now here we are getting into the Civil War. So but really, I joke. It's kind of tied in, though, because that's the same question. Well, did the federal authority have the right to go as authoritative as they did, or were the states allowed to do what they did? Now, in that case, though, I mentioned to you off air, that's, in my mind, it's really not actually a fair comparison to have that discussion, because there you have an organized state with leadership doing something. Here you have chaos, anarchy in the streets.
But there's leadership that's actively allowing that chaos to happen.
Nope, you're right. That is willingness is at a certain level. This willful ignorance or willful not dealing with it is complicit.
Well, and it's not even just the riots. It's that California, when illegal immigrants get arrested, it's a sanctuary state, so they don't hand them over to ICE; they release them. That's actively undermining federal authority.
Right.
And which even before all this started, earlier this month, just like a week ago, the approval rating for Trump's deportations was 54%. Like, the nation approves of this. We want this. We voted for this overwhelmingly. Every state went red, in large part because of immigration. Didn't we? We talked about this last week, that 2 weeks ago, that people really, really care about immigration, and they really don't like what it's done to the country. The majority of Americans. And Governor Newsom is actively undermining that. He's actively undermining the will of American people. These people talk on and on about sacred democracy and how important it is, and now that democracy their sacred, precious democracy hasn't gone the way they wanted. They're upset. They're actively undermining it. Exactly what they accused Trump of doing in the 2020 election, except even more so doing it, because after that Trump was really powerless to do anything, and he did abdicate power and let Biden step in. Whereas Newsom, on the other hand, currently has power within the state of California, and he's using that power to undermine and hamper the will of the American people, the will of millions upon millions of Californians, possibly even the majority of Californians, considering how much the books in that state might be cooked. So it's really time for the federal authority to say, okay, get in line. Like, you're actively undermining the government. You're actively allowing one of the biggest cities in the United States to fall into chaos, and you are being actively deceptive towards both your own citizens and the rest of the country in your handling of this.
And here's where this really comes down, greatly relevant in my mind to us right now, here sitting talking on Unauthorized Caucus, which, by the way, folks, we're going to keep it pretty crisp today because I really want to drive home a few of these questions and some of our, maybe not complete answers, but the way our mind is going now, because this is an opportunity for conservatives to really carve out the correct narrative on federal authority and power, which we've seen that abused badly by Obama and his pen and phone, by Joe Biden and his auto pen.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen that abused. However, there is a place for Alexander Hamilton's Federalist number 78, the energetic executive.
Mm-hmm.
There is a place for strong federal power to preserve the union. Often we see that abused.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time, those of us who are limited government individuals, our natural inclination is to shrink away from that. That's probably not unhealthy,
Mm-hmm.
but also I think some of that has been beaten into us in a bad way. We have now just kind of abdicated our role
Mm-hmm.
to actually use federal power righteously.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happened? We've butted out, and then the neocons and the globalist entanglers came in.
Mm-hmm.
From really my birth year forward, from the 80s, after Reagan, from George H.W. Bush till now, we have left that. So instead of using government power righteously and constitutionally at the federal level, we've only seen it abused. So now as conservatives, often instinct is to just not use it.
Right.
No, we need to change our mindsets.
Mm-hmm.
And also, we need to then change other people's minds.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't mean I'm telling you give Donald Trump a carte blanche, whatever he wants to do is fine. We're telling you, though, in this situation, as we look at it, I think this is those times, this is one of those times, bless you,
Thank you.
when it's time to move forward with strong federal power. But the flip side of that is this is really kind of spicy because we're using a word that the left in the last 4 years has 4 years, very specifically
Misused.
gaslit us about.
But still used.
Right.
Yeah.
They have used and abused the word insurrection. And here's the thing. You know they're lying. You know they're lying.
Mm-hmm.
I know they're lying.
They know they're lying.
They know they're lying.
Well, the people making the decisions know they're lying.
I would argue a lot of nope, you're right. Never mind. I've been watching Jake Tapper's book roll out. He's an idiot. He honestly doesn't. He thinks he's anyway. No one's that good of a liar. He's that good of an ignoramus. Am I allowed to say that? Ignoramus?
Yep.
Can I? Is that a word?
That's an allowed word.
That's an allowed word now. Trump signed that back into law. So
I think that's always been a PG word.
Ignoramus has always been a PG word.
Yeah.
You're right. It came from Cracker Barrel, because that was always Cracker Barrel is an American institution. No, I'm kidding. You know what Cracker Barrel is? You know those little the pegboard things?
Yeah.
Sorry, this is a digression.
Yeah, I'm with the golf tees.
You're in it.
The
Yeah,
game.
the little golf tee
I
thing.
never figured out how to play that game. But
it wasn't ignoramus. Wasn't it like ignoramus or something? It was spelled out funny. Anyway, sorry. Childhood memory coming forward here. This is human interest, people. It's human interest. It's spliced into the show. But they know they're lying. But you're correct. There are a lot of them that are willfully stupid to the point where they honestly don't know. But they have charged the term insurrection so badly. There really is a massive section of the population, including people on the right, who don't understand the truth about what happened on January 6, 2021. And it's that is made all the more difficult by two very different versions of videos that day, in my opinion. The videos from the east side of the Capitol and from inside the Capitol versus the west side of the Capitol. Whereas best I can tell, if anything got out of hand, it was started once by a lot of prodding from bad actors and even some law enforcement, which I hate to just say that. I don't mean to give excuses to anyone who did something they shouldn't have, but it's still, even then, it's not just what it's been made out to be. No matter what it wasn't what the news told you. But there are a lot of people who don't understand that. So we're really coming from behind if we're going to start using the word insurrection. After 4 years of us saying that's not an insurrection, now we go, no, this is an insurrection. Automatically, we're going to have a lot of people, oh, well, look who's finally figured out what an insurrection is. Like
right.
There are a lot of ignorant people who have a smartphone in their hand and think they know everything.
Ignoramuses.
Idiots. But that's going to be a big fight. But here we are, and I think this is maybe this all goes away. They quell it down, and we don't need to move any farther. But
I'm hoping they push it.
I kind of hope they do, because I'd like to break this one wide open.
Right. Because
and just have this fight now.
Yeah, and if they push it far enough, that allows Trump a lot more executive authority, not just with handling this type of situation, but the immigration issue in its entirety. Because I was doing the math the other day about they're trying to get deportations up to 3,000 a day. Because, I mean, I started tracking the ICE deportations from the very beginning, and I saw, it's above 1,000 some days. It's like around 800 some days. They're tweeting them all out. And I realized, like, oh, wow, this is not at all going to get the 20+ million of the low estimate that came over during the Biden administration. And now they're trying to push it up to 3,000, and the big, beautiful bill is going to help provide funding and a lot of taxes on immigration-related stuff that's going to also allow for more funding for border enforcement and immigration enforcement and deportations, etc. But to get that, just the low estimate of the illegals that came across during the Biden administration out of this country, it needs to get up to 15,000 a day for the rest of Trump's administration. Now, are they going to pull that off? That's 5 times as many as 3,000 a day, the current goal that they're like stretching and trying to get the money for. So it's going to take a lot of work to deal with this. But if these rioters and these Democrat governors keep pushing the issue forward and keep going well beyond their rights and duties as the heads of their states and continue to violate the law and violate federal law, this gives a lot more leeway for Trump to properly enforce federal statutes and properly enforce the law that he has put down, and properly enforce immigration, possibly even using the military. Like, so that's why I'm kind of hoping that these people don't take the hint. But also, I mean, this is not just a organic, a bunch of people showed up because they were upset, because we saw the classic telltale sign of, oh, wow, there's somebody behind all of this. The brick pallets. We saw the brick pallets again.
Personal protective equipment being passed out from pickup trucks.
Yep, they were already there.
Yeah.
Now, I think that what Trump needs to do is he needs to start bringing in ALP pallets. Get in touch with Tucker and get ALP pallets for his people. And those need to be ready whenever we're ready to,
Whenever the frat bros return to clean up the graffiti and restore the American flags.
Exactly.
Yeah, the out pallets.
Yeah, and like these are not impossible problems to solve. They're just not impossible problems to solve. But there's so much red tape and bureaucratic and judicial labyrinths that are just set up as soon as somebody tries to act. But it really is a matter of will and overcoming the bureaucracy that's been set up.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. It's just a power of will. Because we saw Gavin Newsom clean up the streets of California. We saw that happen. We saw in El Salvador a much worse situation where this wasn't even people that need to be deported. This was like, oh my goodness, the entire country is overrun with gangs. We saw that get taken care of. It's just a matter of will. Crime is not difficult to solve. Disorder is not difficult to solve. But I mean, that's a big part of the whole academic industrial complex. All these papers. There's this term I learned the other week called Occam's butter knife, because you know what Occam's razor is. Like the simplest explanation is most likely to be correct. This is the complete inverse of that, of choosing the most complicated explanation possible, which is what all of academia is. You don't need, decades worth of 1,000-page papers about the causes of crime and how we stop it. Like, it's not that complicated. But that's what we have, and that's so when state authorities and government authorities are like, there's a lot of crime here. How do we solve it? It's so simple. Just enforce the law. Use the power of the state to enforce the law properly. Even within the bounds of the law and the constraints on the state, like, you can still do it. It's still possible. The founders didn't think, wow, let's just let crime happen. Let's let disorder reign. No, the government has the power to enforce order and stop crime and protect our borders. So we need to say, okay, all of you academics with your fancy PhDs and 1,000-page papers about how crime is a bunch of econometric sociological models, and we looked at it and it said crime can't be fixed, we just have to let it. No, just say, be quiet, we're dealing with this, we're going to fix this country.
We really have, and that is a whole separate caucus to talk about the expert culture that we have submitted ourselves to, which is how we've gotten from crime fighting to dealing with justice involved
crime
persons.
coping.
Well, I was just going to say coping with justice-involved persons. My goodness. The people with capacity for involvement with justice, whatever it is that they would come up with instead of just saying, thugs and
Trump
dirtbags.
is not a felon. He is a 36 times justice-involved individual.
36 times justice-involved individual. Oh, my goodness. This really is, though. This is a big deal. We have a huge opportunity to take this forward, and I kind of hope that we have it out now because – and we are. I mean, to your point, you just talked about Trump's approval ratings. Trump's approval ratings have gone up through all of this.
Oh, I didn't find more recent ones.
Oh, no. Through this past weekend, which the riots started, what was it? Like Friday, Saturday, Sunday was the real spicy days when it spun up. And then by Monday, June, what is it? The 8th, June the 9th. Mm-hmm. By Monday, June 9th, we were at full-blown he said, she said between Gavin Newsom and Donald Trump, and we're calling in the military. We've nationalized the federal guard, or activated the federal guard, I should say. So it over this weekend that this all spun up originally, whenever it is you're listening to this, know that it wasn't just the polling going into it. Trump's polling through this has continued to go up, and even out of places I wouldn't expect. CBS, CNN, The Morning Consult, places that are not right-wing. Like if Scott Rasmussen is saying Trump's polling is going up, I'm like, okay, with a grain of salt. Mm-hmm. With these folks, when Trump's polling is going up, it's like this is not his crowd.
Yep.
And it's even going up here. But one of the most interesting shifts I was looking at, this CNN, just funny to watch them mind blown talk about this. When it comes to asking a fundamental question over the last several years, and this is one of the, I would say, as far as polling goes, again, numbers are phony baloney, trend lines matter. You can extrapolate information from trend lines. Here's a trend line from you. When it comes to the discussion, I know a lot of the great right-wing world on Twitter and everywhere else on X has been talking about how much the Overton window has been pushed on this. Now we're talking about shutting the country down, mass deportations, getting rid of people who aren't like us, all of this kind of vernacular that is just, at this point, has kind of been shoved over into the weird racist closet of you can't talk about that, when it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with our nation and the rule of law and people who assimilate to the values of this nation, et cetera, and so on. Those conversations are being had more and more. One of the biggest groups that it's happening from, the legal immigrants. Legal immigrants, people who are already here, who have obtained their naturalized citizenship or are still here, legal residents. Check this swing out. From 2020 to now, there has been a 40-point swing in the question, who do you trust more for immigration policy, Democrats or Republicans? In 2020, there was a 32-point advantage to Democrats. That has now swung all the way back to the other side, and there's an 8-point advantage for the Republican Party. When it comes to legal immigrants answering the question, who do you trust more to handle immigration policy? A 40-point shift from the left to the right. And that's the Republican Party, which are a bunch of nitwits largely. But I digress. Sorry, Congress, not sorry. Anyway, I can count the decent members. It feels like on one hand, actually one scarred hand missing some fingers. Sometimes it feels like, but that's a massive shift, and that is the legal immigrants saying no, get them out of my country. That's interesting. I mean, it makes sense. It's logical on one level, but also that's a credible number. That's pretty hard to combat. Oh, it's just white heritage Americans who want everyone to go. No, it's not. Right. It's all the people who bled and, toil, sweat, and tears to come here legally who are like, get them out.
Right.
You're destroying everything.
Yeah, it makes sense because I have a good friend that he's here on a student visa in graduate school right now, and he's from South America. But earlier this year or late last year, he was like having to renew his visa, and that's a whole process. It's like getting your driver's license. It's just a huge pain, and then you just have to hope they approve it. Unlike getting your driver's license, you just kind of have to hope it works out. And he has to go through all these hoops, jump through all these hoops, do all this work, just to be able to stay in the country. And he somebody who puts in the actual work to be able to be in this country and follow the rules and have the privilege of getting to partake in America is. Those people hate the fact that there's just these people coming over that are protected by all this crap in Democrat states, all these sanctuary cities, stuff like that, and totally skirting the entire process that the legal immigrants have worked hard to get through. There's people finding these loopholes and cheating. I mean, like, if you work really hard on something and you achieve something through your own merits and like through hard work, through grit, and then you see somebody else just taking the shortcut, but they get the same results as you, you're going to be pretty resentful from that, and rightfully so. Or if you see them getting even more benefits, because the immigrants that, work hard to get into this country and that dot all the I's and cross all the T's, and actually work hard to become productive members and contribute to America, and that is why they get to stay. Like, they hate the fact that there are people coming in illegally who are just getting put up in luxury hotels in New York City and raking in benefits constantly and committing massive amounts of fraud, probably receiving Social Security benefits as well, and sometimes even voting, allegedly. So it makes sense that these people would be very resentful at this point as illegal immigration and the protections for it start to accelerate, because they've gone through it the right way, and they see these people that they were actually, the reason they're here is to not be around those people. Like that's another thing. My friend from South America, he knows South Americans better than I do, and he's like, cut off immigration.
And that's the thing. I'm seeing the, in the what I would call the more pushy, the more edgy right-wing world on the internet, the specific, very clear language: America is full. It's time to close the door. And it's like, that sounds pretty rough, but then you go back and realize here's a tandem to that among not just legal immigrants to the United States, but among voting immigrant citizens, naturalized citizens, immigrant citizens, the share of votes for Trump. I think it's pretty inarguable. His rhetoric and messaging on immigration, better, more secure immigration, anti-illegal immigration, cracking down on it, has been pretty consistently bold and right wing or pro national sovereignty, but I'd say it's gotten more bold, more right wing as he's moved along. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
From 2016 to 2024. Well, here, among immigrant citizens, Trump won 36% of the vote in 2016, 39% of the vote, a little bit of an uptake in 2020, but the leap from 2020 to 2024, it jumped from 39 to 47%. We're about to tip over where more than 50% of immigrant citizens are voting for Trump, one of the most right-wing candidates we've had in almost anyone's lifetime alive now. That is a tipping point of, oh, wow, this isn't just crazy people and commentators and random podcast hosts on the internet saying America's full, maybe it's time we close the door. That is America's population who got here. And you can't, like, I'm sure you could say, well, yeah, now that they're in, they want the door shut behind them. It's like, well, you could argue that, but that's not really where this goes. This lines up with people saying this is not that. This is an unassimilated nightmare, an illegal nightmare that is leading to, back to our first topic, foreign nationalists invading our cities alongside insurrectionists in the United States, burning one of America's biggest cities, not all of it, but portions of it. This is wild. This is unacceptable. It's time to close the door. That is not, the random musings of philosopher, warrior, patriots, or whatever on X and Gab. That is the Overton window, very firmly moving in a very popular direction. It's interesting to see, and I think it's important. It's been I hate to use this word. I'm going to cross over just a touch. For quite some time, there's been a reckoning coming on this, and we're here. The settling of accounts has come, is my great hope. So anything else before we close it out today? Posse Comitatus, insurrectionists, the Marines coming in and taking charge of Los Angeles, arresting Karen Bass, and going over to Sacramento, and Gavin Newsom, and anything? I'm just throwing ideas out there now. I'm not necessarily suggesting this happens.
I say get them all.
We must return law and order. And this is my last word on this is when it comes to discussing all of this and using correctly something like the Insurrection Act or federal power, or not suspending Posse Comitatus, but actually having the exception applied and moving forward. It's time for conservatives to be bold and also to understand we don't want to handcuff ourselves with a system that A, the left doesn't abide by, and B, in their fights, and B, really essentially has been suspended or all but suspended at this point by the monstrosity that the left has created. If you want to protect that system, it's not defending it while it's currently in place. It's reinstating it because it's been gotten rid of. And of course, I'm referring to our constitutional republic.
Yep.
At this point, we've not been behaving like a constitutional republic. We've been behaving like an administrative state. And that is thanks to the left not playing by the rules.
Right.
So if you're going to play by the rules, we're going to lose. And I hate to say that because it's against everything within me. But, you know, I'm not here to be nice. I'm here to be right. And pro-Constitution stance at this point is to not make sure you, in a very unnecessary way, try to handcuff yourself with the Constitution when nobody else is doing that. If you want to restore the Constitution, you got to beat the bad guys. And then we restore the Constitution because it was made for, as John Adams told us, a moral and religious people. It's wholly inadequate for the governance of any other. So if we're going to get back to the Constitution, we have to get back to that kind of moral populace and respect for law and order and rule of law. So that's my thoughts.
My thoughts is I agree.
There you go. Well, there you have it. You've got some fun stuff to go and look at. Posse Comitatus, the Insurrection Act of 1807. What's going on in Los Angeles, how the Overton window is shifting very greatly on the status of immigration at all in the United States of America, both legal and illegal. I imagine that was what drove, what's his name, Vivek under. My goodness, he's already off top of mind so far. That's what drove Vivek under in MAGA world was his H-1B stuff. I have to wonder if that wasn't maybe some of what was behind the Elon Musk stuff. I kind of wonder because at the end of the day, I hate to call him a technocrat, but he's a big tech lord, and there's business considerations and a lot of foreign entanglements and cheap stuff needed and cheap labor needed, and I kind of wonder if he doesn't really – he's no Stephen Miller. Right. And just at the end of the day, that was it. Stephen Miller, Scott Bessent won, and they have Trump's here more, and they are the true – I hate to say pure, but the pure nationalist people. There's others who are kind of there but have some issues, and that was the rub. Yep. I have a feeling. So, all right, folks, that does it for us today. All the goodies, unauthorizedcaucus.com. You can subscribe specifically to get the podcast with all the notes, the resources, and everything else. If you don't want to be bothered by that, though, you don't have to be, but I suggest that you do. Like and share this out. Subscribe to us on Rumble after you get on the email list. And then again, go and say thank you to all the things that make this possible. Again, there's Wide Awake Clothing and T-Rex Inc. down in the description. You'll find the links and a code for that. Also, always go to phyllisschlafly.com. It's not our alma mater because we're still here. Our bread and butter. We've got to figure out what we do. But what brings it all to you is
our
Phyllis
primary
Schlafly
patron.
Eagles. Our primary patron. The patron of primacy.
See you next week.
See you next week, everybody. Wait a minute. Work.